So welcome. I am so delighted that each of you is here and equally delighted that we're live streaming. And so I welcome those of you who are joining us somewhat remotely as well, which may have been a good choice. As we look out the windows of this very room, we're seeing the wind kicking up, so it's going to be an exciting day weather-wise here. So who has come here from the farthest? Go ahead, be bold. Declare you have come from a long way. Ohio? Anybody farther than Ohio?
Los Angeles.
Good for you. I'm from LA, so all right. Yeah, good. And someone else? Chicago. Any other West Coasters here? All right. Hi, Alton. Come on in. So in a moment, I'm going to introduce our wonderful panel, and they will give you a great deal of insight into not only what our field education program is like here at Harvard Divinity School, but most particularly, we've asked them to focus on how do we define ministry. But I wanted to spend a few moments here at the beginning giving you an overview, particularly of how we do field education here at Harvard Divinity School and what our definition of ministry is, particularly through this lens of field education. I'm Emily Click, and I'm Assistant Dean for Ministry Studies. Happy to meet with any of you. I've sort of blocked out the day, so if you have particular questions for me, I'll be at the lunch after this, and then later this afternoon. Always, you may also contact me by email, particularly for those of you who aren't able to be here in person today. Feel free to email me. Emily Click is my name again. My own background is I'm an ordained United Church of Christ minister, and after serving for a decade in pastoral ministry, I went and got my PhD and have been teaching in theological education now for, I think, 20 years. For many years, first at Claremont, at that time Claremont School of Theology on the West Coast, and then now for the past 7 years here at Harvard Divinity School. As a part of my doctoral work, I surveyed and studied the formation of religious leaders through field education, which meant that I studied field education programs all across the country and have continued in my professional and scholarly formation to be in touch with many of the field educators throughout the country. And so I want to be a resource to you as you sit there in those chairs thinking to yourself, do I want to do graduate study? If I do want to do graduate study, do I want to do theological study? If I do want to do that, do I want to do that at Harvard Divinity School? I hope that this hour will help you in each of those pieces of discernment that you're deeply engaged in right now. If you are considering doing theological education, and particularly a Master of Divinity, you will be required to do field education wherever you go. That's a requirement of every Master of Divinity program. However, you should know this. It differs widely between different programs. So if you are going and visiting several programs and thinking to yourself, what should I do? Where should I be? Be sure to check in and see how they handle field education, because that will be one thing that will mark your program for you. And you should find a place that resonates with your values and how you think you should go about field education. So what is field education? It's an opportunity for you to engage during your program of study in a ministry setting and to develop yourself toward your own leadership stance as a minister. We here at Harvard Divinity School require you to do 2 full units of field education if you're doing a Master of Divinity. If you're in a Master of Theological Studies, you're welcome to do field education, but it does not count toward your degree. And that's important for you to understand, that we have no difference in treatment of Masters of Theology Theological Studies students or MDiv students. So if is anybody sitting out here thinking about an MTS at the moment? Good. Okay, well, I'm glad you're here because you're very much welcome to be part of the field ed program. Each unit requires you to do 350 to 400 hours in a ministry setting, and you'll be hearing wonderful descriptions of those ministry settings from our 4 panelists in just a moment. It would be understandable if you were to just immediately think, oh, okay, field ed, that's where you get the skills you need to be a minister, whatever in your mind is your stereotype of minister. That's a part of what field ed is, but it's really only maybe 1/3 of what field ed is about, getting skills. Because you have to think to yourself, well, what do we mean by skills? What are skills? And what do we mean by ministry? So let me talk a little bit about each of those. What we think of as ministry here, I'm going to give you my definition. Each person would really give you a very different one, is the imaginative engagement of your gifts with what you understand to be the needs of the world. So we cultivate imagination here at HDS in all of our programs. In a way, Field Ed is a playground in which you develop imagination. Playground, I have a very high church view of playground, right? That's in no way putting it down. That's saying we understand that you need to be playful in understanding yourself, in understanding the world, flexible. You need to develop what we call pastoral agility to fully engage with how you are and how the world is and how your understanding of what we might call the divine presence engages with all of that. So that might look like the kind of ministry I did for 10 years where you stand in a pulpit and you're in a church and you sit on the missions committee or whatever. And a large number of our students do that. It also might look very, very different from that. And our program is able to support you in whichever direction you go. But we ask you, what does ministry mean for you? What do you mean by ministry when you talk about it this way? And that's where, remember I said development of skills is one piece. Another piece is theological reflection. So we ask you to do an hour's worth of theological reflection with a trained supervisor. I spend a year training every single supervisor in theological reflection. One of the reasons we've asked Jed to be here for the panel today is he's a real expert at engaging students in the site in how they reflect upon the ministry. So he not only knows how to do the exciting ministry to which he's called, but also how to pull students in to thinking theologically about what they're doing. Now, many of you right now are in Teach for America or doing some kind of volunteer opportunity. You're already doing exciting engagements with the world that you might construe as ministry. Very few of you are given that wonderful gift of having somebody who sits with you and says, what's that about? How do you see God active in that? Are you experiencing the absence of God? What's bubbling up for you? What do you do with failure? And that's the piece that's so exciting about Field Ed that really draws people in to our program. So we want you to develop this pastoral agility. We want you to develop a sense of your own gifts, your own calling, a sense of what ministry is, and to deepen your theological roots within your own tradition and often across other traditions as well. So we have handbooks here for field education. They give you all the details. These are all available on the web. So if you're sitting out there saying, well, that's too bad, I didn't get that handbook, we'll mail it to you if you'd like, but this exact same handbook is also on the web. So let me give you just a couple more details, and then I'm going to turn to our panel. When you come here to Harvard Divinity School, there are a couple of distinctives you need to know. One is that we're very capacious in our definition of ministry, which allows you to be involved in really different things when you're in field ed, if that's what you need to be and that's what you need to do. And one of the ways we're able to do that is we have developed a system where if you are work study eligible and your site is work study eligible, then we may work it out that you can earn your work study allotment in your field education placement. There's a lot of ifs and so forth in that, but the fact is a substantial number of our students earn their work study allotment through field education. As far as I know, there is no other program in the United States that's able to do that simply because it takes a lot of staff support, which is something you need to know about. We have the Office of Ministry Study, which is very well staffed. Ordinarily, I would be introducing my great colleague, Laura Tuak, who partners with me in leadership in field education. I believe you heard from Dudley Rose in the earlier session, and he oversees the entire program. So we have very good staffing. If you're not work study eligible or your site isn't, we still require that you receive a stipend for the work you do. A lot of details in that. I can go into that some other time. We allow you to either participate in an accredited site that we have identified and worked hard with. The outdoor church that Jedediah Mannis is in is one example of a fully accredited site with a certified supervisor. Also, sometimes you need to design your own field ed because you look at that list of 150 sites that we have and you say, that doesn't fit me. My particular religious tradition doesn't even show up on your list. We work with you on that, on something called a student-initiated placement. and all the details of that are listed in the handbook, but that's another option for something that you can do. And it does allow for a lot of flexibility, and that's something that's pretty much unique, not entirely unique, but quite unique to Harvard Divinity School. The third thing that I want to touch on, and I think Zach will talk a little bit about, and that is that we have funding for a limited number of international placements. So like over last summer, we had a student who was in Peru, another student who was in Guatemala. I went and actually visited a student who was on the island of Iona with the Iona community off of Scotland. We had another student working in East Belfast. So we do have the possibility of having students, and of course Zach will talk about how he was in Hyderabad, India. So that's another thing that's a great strength here at Harvard Divinity School. I will say there again, if you're looking at several schools, you want to look at that because we are not the only school that does international or multicultural engagement, but it plays very differently in different schools. So you want to pay close attention to how the school talks about what they do. There are a number of other schools that have strong programs with international field education. Okay, so that's my kind of overview. As I say, I'll be very available for questions, but I'm really excited for you to hear from our panelists. So what I'm going to do is just introduce all four of them, and then I'm going to get out of the way, and I'm sure that they will be available for questions afterwards. Let me begin by introducing the fellow I have referred to several times here, and that is the Rev. Jedediah Mannis. I don't know if anybody calls you Jedediah. Your mom probably does when you're in trouble, right?
Actually, lots of homeless people do.
Okay. All right. Well, it's a beautiful name, but we call him Jed most of the time. He's an ordained minister in the United Church of Christ and pastor of the Outdoor Church of Cambridge, which is an outdoor church for the chronically homeless men and women. I often hear you say it's for people who cannot or will not go inside. The Outdoor Church addresses the spiritual and material wants of more than 120 chronically homeless men and women. He's also the president of the Shelter Island Fund, a nonprofit organization that preserves open space throughout Massachusetts using limited development as a conservation strategy. Rev. Mannis is a graduate of Yale College, Yale Law School, and Harvard Divinity School. You finally found your way to the right place. We're glad to hear that. And has served on a variety of municipal and private boards, committees, and commissions. Jed is also a practicing attorney specializing in land preservation and conservation. He's published Joseph Tuckerman and the Outdoor Church and Born to be a Soldier, The Letters of James T. Miller. 2 other books are in progress. Next to Jed is Lily Oster, who is graduating in 2013, which means she's a third-year MDiv, whose interests include ecology, theology, and non-religious religiosity. She's from North Carolina, but has lived in New York City, Montreal, Iowa, San Francisco, and Jerusalem. She studied literature and dance at Wesleyan University before coming to HDS. She worked in the worlds of modern dance and environmental advocacy. She has a Jewish background, a Buddhist meditation practice, and a love of Christian mystics, but she does not belong to any religious tradition. She was ordained this summer as an interfaith minister and is interested in teaching, reading, writing, dancing, and farming after graduation. And for all of you, I'm going to let you refer to your field ed however you'd like rather than me listing what you've done as field ed. Is that all right? Okay, and next to Lily is Alton Price, Jr., also graduating in 2013. Alton is a third-year Master of Divinity student. Prior to attending HDS, he served as a high school teacher, an experience that has forever augmented his appreciation for teachers, as well as his understanding of public service. He's also earned a BS in secondary education. Alton's academic interests span several topics, including spiritual care and counseling, the intersection of religion and literature, religious poetry, religious education, interfaith relations, and homiletics and preaching. Ministry and community service reign uppermost in his heart. He has served as a Christian youth counselor and religious educator in several school and church settings. In 2012, he was commended for his ministerial promise and named a Hopkins shareholder, one of the oldest foundations of its kind in the country. He was also named a Williams Scholar. And next to him is Zach Kerzee, a second-year student, MDiv student from Abilene, Texas. Zach is currently the student intern and music director of the Outdoor Church of Cambridge and is seeking ordination in the New England Conference of the United Methodist Church. And as I say, was working with an interfaith group in Hyderabad, India, as a Greeley Scholar last summer. Okay, I'm going to get out of the way and ask you each to do your presentations, and then hopefully we'll have time for questions.
You want me to start?
Yes.
Thanks, Emily. The outdoor church is about 10 years old now. It is exactly what it sounds like. We have taken the church outdoors for people, chronically homeless people, who can't or won't go indoors to a conventional church. In Cambridge, for those of you who haven't already spent a lot of time here, there are maybe 600 homeless people at any given time, and also at any given time, 120 to 150 of them are outdoors. In other words, they're on the street, they're not part of a shelter system. They are, by and large, because of mental illness or substance addiction, incapable of taking care of themselves, even to the extent of maintaining an apartment or staying in a program. Those are the people to whom we minister, the people we want to minister to, and it means that, unlike most social programs, we have no expectation that the people that we are ministering to are going to improve radically. In fact, I'd say over the last 10 years, of the 400 or so people that I've met out there, one has managed to get off the street and stay off the street in all that period of time. So we are not a social service agency, and although many people feel that what we do out there is good and moral and ethical, that's not why we're out there. We're out there because we are called, as we understand it, to be disciples of Christ. We are theologically driven. We believe that we are a church like any other church, and therefore we do all the things that other churches do. We have a service on Sunday morning in Porter Square, and then another one at 1 o'clock on the Cambridge Common, and then on Thursday nights we have a service of Compline at the only wet shelter in actually the Boston area. We do an enormous amount of pastoral visiting, primarily prisons and hospitals and locked psych wards and any place where our people are likely to end up. We do baptisms and all sorts of other things, unhappily far more memorial services than weddings, which is, I suppose, probably a good thing as far as the weddings go. But we're very conscious of wanting to provide all of the services and experience of a regular church to our people that they would have if they were in a regular church. And accordingly, our interns get a good dose, an overdose of the kind of training, the kind of experience that they would get in any church. We're persuaded that what we're doing out there is as good a training to be a minister as one would have in any conventional church, and perhaps better. We are expecting to stay out there indefinitely. The homeless will, at least our homeless people, are bound to be out there for the foreseeable future, and we will be out there with them. We provide, on the social service side, we actually provide 2 meals a week out there. We give out some 300 sandwiches and pairs of socks and gloves and scarves and toiletry kits every weekend. And so we do provide some material as well as spiritual help to our people. But we are primarily a church, and everything we do points in that direction. So I will leave the description of the internship itself to Zach. Just sort of close by saying that it's around February when we begin to think about those internships that are in Bermuda rather than up here. It gets cold here, but that's, I think, part of the experience.
Thanks, Jim. That's great.
I'm Lily. So as Emily mentioned, I'm not a traditional religious student here, but it was important for me to be involved in a program that was forming its students toward ministry. So I've had to take seriously Emily's claim that ministry takes many different forms, and Field Ed has really helped me figure out what form might possibly be appropriate for me. So I've done a lot of Field Ed. I'm a little tired of doing Field Ed actually, but I can't think about things, I have to try them. So my first year I was working as an interfaith intern for the Wayland Clergy Association, which is a group of ministers of churches and leaders of synagogues and of one mosque in a town that's near here. And so I was thinking I was interested in something involved with congregations, and so I was basically like their rotating intern for all these different organizations. And through that, I realized I didn't want to be involved in congregational leadership. And that has been sort of my feel good story, which I imagine it is for many people, that sort of like crossing things off a list, that this is not my world, but it was really important for me to try that out. And through it, I also learned a lot. I got to preach all the time. I got to talk to different kinds of people. I got to encounter a lot of resistance to interfaith work. It was important along the way. After that year, I kind of needed a break, and Field Ed helped me take that too, and sent me to an abbey where I worked as a farmer and sort of a contemplative nun for the summer. And that was probably the most important thing that's happened to me in my time here. And I would say that a major factor of my education so far has just been kind of the opportunity for personal reflection that this program offers, and just taking 3 years of your life to figure yourself out. And that my time at the Abbey was really important for that. And it was, it was a non-traditional field that I proposed it, but they allowed me time to write and farm and make art and consider that ministry. So after that, I was moving toward hospital chaplaincy as a possibility for myself. So I worked at a cancer hospital last year. And that was also very transformative and important work in many ways that ultimately showed me that I didn't see myself so much as a chaplain. And that what came out of that is that it really mattered to me to be in a world of kind of books, sort of, or like of ideas of reading and thinking with other people, that I wasn't as much of a pastoral presence as I envisioned myself as. So out of that year, I realized that I was interested in teaching high school. And I know this sounds really spastic, that I'm like all over the place, but it does make sense in my own heart. And so this year I am teaching religion at a high school near here, and it's wonderful. It's an amazing fit, and I thrilled to go to my placement every week, and I can see myself doing this for the future. So I have finally, through all these tests, come to something that I feel I can carry forward, and that, as Emily said, really matches my own gifts and what I see the world wanting. So.
Hello, my name is Alton Price, and you said something that was important, personal reflection, and that's something that I'm very grateful for. I guess when I arrived here at HDS, I honestly didn't think a whole lot about field education. I said, this is something that I'm going to do, and I'll get it over with, and I'll graduate, because you're thinking about the courses, you're thinking about the professors, but now that I look back on it, my experiences have probably been more important to me than the coursework, than my professors. Last year, I worked at a church. I was a counselor, I preached a few times, and I think led Sunday school sessions, Bible study, things like that. And I discovered that I did not like it at all. And that was very hard for me, because I wanted to like it. And I remember meeting with Dean Cliff and Mrs. Tuak on several occasions, because it's hard when you come to a place with an idea of what you want to do, and it's not that you fail, but you just realize you don't want to do it. And they really helped me to sort of be okay with that, and to realize, Alton, okay, you've tried this, you don't like it, do something else. And they really didn't say it that quickly. It was more of a piece by piece sort of helping me to get through that. And I got through it. This year, I am at Phillips Academy in Andover, and it's ideal for me because, are you clapping or are you gonna?
Yeah, no, I mean, I went there, and I one of my professors there is also a professor at HDS, and just amazing how, like, the connection between the two schools.
Yeah,
And,
it's great.
And yeah.
It's great. I think that's probably one of the reasons as to why I really like it. it's a better fit for me. And when I say that, I mean I'm comfortable there. I actually like going. And I don't know why. I had the field education experience last year at the church. Well, that's what I thought at first, but now I'm thinking at least I know what it is that I don't want to do. At least I know what I don't like to do. And I'm very fortunate to have had someone to work with me. Because how do you know if you're not gonna like something unless you try it? And so with this session, I am preaching, counseling students, but because it's at a school, there's also an administrative aspect to it, which is what I was missing from the church. I'm able to attend school meetings, faculty meetings, even school dances I've been invited to. So I get to go to high school again. That's why I like it. But it's been a great experience, and I mean, just don't think that we're all trying to sell the field ed department here. It really is great, and they will tell you it's not about them. They really are here to help us figure out what we think our gifts are and what we want to give back to the world. And I think that's a ministry, not necessarily working in a church behind a pulpit, if that's not for you. So I'm thankful for the program for helping me discover that.
Hi, my name is Zach. I'm a second-year MDiv candidate, United Methodist. And this last summer, I got to do my first field ed placement through the Greeley International Fellowship in Hyderabad, India. And the work that I did there was interfaith work. And it gave me an opportunity to do interfaith work for the first time. As Emily mentioned, I'm from Texas. And interfaith work is something that's always been very important to me. And I sat on the Abilene Interfaith Council when I was there. The interesting thing about that council, though, is that it was made up of about 30 really well-meaning, straight, white Protestant males between the age of 18 and 65. And so it wasn't real interfaith work. It was people talking about the importance of interfaith work. But through field education this summer, I got the opportunity to do actual, substantive, tangible interfaith work with great religious, ethnic, and cultural diversity in Hyderabad, India. And there's really no such thing as work in Hyderabad, India that isn't interfaith work, because the children that we were working with are, made up of all different backgrounds and religions. And for them, it's just as easy as playing cricket in the backyard. That's interfaith work for them, because they're so diverse. So that was a great opportunity. And if you'd like to talk about international field ed, I'd love to tell you all that I know. The Greeley grant that I got this summer it pays for everything. It was a $4,000 grant. It paid for your flight, and your housing, your lodging, food. It takes care of everything. It's a great opportunity. This year, I'm in my second field ed placement with the good Reverend Jedediah Mannis at the Outdoor Church of Cambridge. I first heard of the Outdoor Church of Cambridge at this panel 2 years ago. So I was sitting where you are, and I remember kind of taking a mental note thinking, well, that sounds kind of awesome. I've been doing homeless work in Abilene, and it was something that I wanted to continue when I got here. In my second week, I was sitting on another panel here in my first year, and Jed was talking about the outdoor church, and I thought, well, that sounds really great, and I kind of made a mental note of it. I went home, spoke to my brand new roommate, who I didn't know anything about really, who had graduated from HDS the year before, and I said, man, have you heard of the Outdoor Church of Cambridge? It sounds like a really interesting thing. And he goes, heard of it? I'm the executive director. And so it was kind of a serendipitous moment. Tom Hathaway, the executive director, was my roommate when I first got here. And I said to him, I'd really like to come out and work with you guys. And I'd really like to find a way to integrate my music in my ministry. Do you guys have a music program? And he said, no, we don't do music currently. But I'll talk to Jed and see if maybe you can come out with your guitar one day. And so I came about 3 weeks later with my guitar, and I think I've missed 3 Sundays minus my time in India since that time. And I'm currently the music director of Outdoor Church of Cambridge. So that really shows even though it's not a student-initiated site, it still allows for creativity and passion to come together. And so for my passion for ministry to the homeless and music can meld together in this awesome field education site. And just to kind of give you an idea of what outdoor church looks like, Saturdays and Sundays we go out after our services, which are Anglican-esque services with the service of Holy Communion. And we give out sandwiches and toiletry kits and water and juice and really simple things like socks, things that people don't normally think about that homeless persons need because they don't have a washing machine. Socks are something that they need a lot of. And a lot of times they'll ask us, what church are you guys with? What church do you represent? And kind of the running joke that we say is, well, this one, and we kind of mime out a square around our coolers that hold the sandwiches, because we're a church without a building. Our church is the services at 9 and 1 of Holy Communion and the sandwich ministry. That's what our church is. And so field education allows you to think outside the box, literally, even outside the four walls of a church. And it allows us to meld our passions together in a supportive environment that allows for theological education. Working with Jed has helped me articulate my vocational call. It's helped me question whether or not I feel called to vocational ministry, and I've come to the conclusion that I do. And just a couple weeks ago, I declared my candidacy in the New England Conference of the Methodist Church, and so I'll be an ordained minister, and it wouldn't have happened without this theological reflection. So, yes, that's my field ed bit.
Thank you, panelists. Let me begin the question period with a couple of questions to them, and I encourage you to be thinking about your questions. If you have a question and you asked it, somebody else is going to be glad you did because they probably have the same question. But let me begin by touching on something that I didn't mention, which is at the same time as you do your first full year-long unit of field education, which is during an academic year, you're required to do an accompanying course called meaning making. And I believe, Zach, you're in that course now, and Alton and Lily did that course last year. So what can you tell them about the course and how it was helpful to have that paired with field ed?
For me, I encountered a lot of issues and simply needed someone to talk about those issues with. And we sort of, there's a method that we go over in our class to sort of discuss what everyone is going through. And I think we sort of serve as an academic support system. We talk about our feelings, about our emotions, about what we could have done better. It's good to have that, especially if you're doing a field placement that you've never done before. And so it sort of helps you to organize your thoughts and feelings. In addition to that, if you need further assistance, you can also, during class time, you can go to your instructor, like I did, and say, I think I need to talk to you without the class. I need to talk to you about some one-on-one stuff that I'm going through on my field placement. And so I was very grateful for that because I needed that time to talk about what I was going through and how I was feeling.
It has the class has a really interesting name, meaning making. It's not Intro to Theological Field Education 1306 or anything like that. It's meaning making, and the idea behind the course is that that meaning is something that we construct retrospectively after our experiences, and that's done through reflection. And so what meaning making does is it provides an academic framework through which we can work through our experiences and derive from that meaning that can help us in our vocational paths. Question?
Just a follow-up question on just how the course is structured. Is it structured as far as a lecture, or is it structured as far as small groups? Or how's it? Because I know some do it, and I mean I've heard of some places where they do the small groups where they break off. So I was just asking.
Well, my class right now has seven people in it with one instructor, And it's a process of reflecting together in class, but also through papers.
So it's a year-long class that meets roughly every other week, and you're assigned to a group with a person who is appointed as a instructor for the course. So we have actual practitioners. We have 6 different sections, and you're assigned to one of those sections which you meet with throughout the year. So it helps form a community of trust in which you can do cases. Everybody has to write a case and do theological reflection on the case.
What's the process by which students are matched up with CPE placements?
Okay, so CPE, for those of you, many of you probably don't know what that refers to as clinical pastoral education. And it is an opportunity to serve, usually almost always, in a hospital setting with an accredited supervisor. And that process is actually a standalone institution. The Association of Clinical Pastoral Education is separately accredited and administered from Harvard Divinity School. However, we recognize it as one of the options that you can do for field ed. So, and it usually is a full-time engagement, not always. You can do it part-time during the academic year, but most people do that over the summer, usually for 10 or 11 weeks full-time. And that is something that takes place not only in Boston, but throughout the country. And so sometimes people go home or they go somewhere they're interested in going and stay there for 10 weeks to do that. As is true with all of our field education, the student takes the initiative to find and secure their field ed placement. So in the case of CPE, you decide where it is that you're interested in going, you apply to that program, interview with them, and the two of you decide together whether that's what you'll do. Now, Lily referred to her placement, which was at a hospital. It was not CPE per se, but it was very much like CPE. Can you say a little more about Dana-Farber and how that program is run?
Sure. Well, given CPE has its own requirements of sort of like papers you have to write and hours you have to fulfill, and Dana-Farber is a cancer hospital here in Boston that has a similar model, but we don't submit things to this over umbrella accrediting body. And also my supervisor talked about it as a program that was more geared toward professional development, whereas CPE is more focused on sort of like group therapy is how I understand it, that like investigation of your own issues that you're bringing to pastoral care, whereas Dana-Farber was more focused on the practices of chaplaincy, the logistics and practical problems that you encounter along the way, and also the theology that's inherent in that. But again, it was more practically focused.
So there are a number of options, both for, as you've heard, school chaplaincy, which Lily and Alton are both doing right now, and hospital chaplaincy as well. Yes.
Hi, I am considering pursuing a master's in theological studies. I'm not really sure if I want to go to pastoral leadership. But my question is, do you know of any field ed pieces where you could gain experience in ministry, but also dealing with things like law or public policy or things of that nature?
Yes. So we have a fair number of students who either come, as Jed did, already having completed his law degree, others who are taking some courses at the law school while they're here, and others who move on to do a law degree after the completion of either an MTS or an MDiv. So it's not uncommon. And those who have that kind of attendant interest find a variety of ways to engage with law while they're here. One particular student comes to mind who was very, very interested in perhaps pursuing civil rights law, and she found a field ed placement actually with the Attorney General's office in Boston, and worked with the Attorney General on various cases having to do with civil rights, and that was her field ed. That took a lot of work. I mean, it's easy to summarize, but the student, I cannot overemphasize when you say, well, what's the process of matching up? The student does a lot of work to find and secure these places. We are absolutely there with you all the way and supporting you, but I don't want to understate what it takes to pull something like that off. And the students tend to want to do that. So that's
How is it to hold the coursework that you're doing concurrently with the placement? Because especially I was thinking, Lily, as you were talking about how many different experiences you had and how emotionally draining or enriching, but taxing, to place yourself into all of those and fully live into them. Well, and just that was tiring to think about, and then think, oh, I have coursework to do in addition to that. So if any of you have thoughts about it, I'd love to hear your experience.
Yeah, your question just made me tired. Oh my God. It's a lot, and I wouldn't have done field ed this year had I not needed to do field ed to figure out the direction I wanted to move in. It's a lot. I don't know how to. I think the benefit that I feel, the clear benefit, is that I tend to kind of get swept away by ideas, and so in taking 4 classes, I can go in so many different directions as to what I think I need to do in the world, and having something that's grounding me outside of an academic environment with sort of like real people has been really important as a field of reflection. And I guess I've always been interested in practical applications of theology and spirituality, and so that's been the way that I've manifested that I've been committed to having some sort of out in the world component to my education the entire time. It would be a lot better to have these 15 hours free sometimes, but it's just worked out.
I know that working with the outdoor church is important sometimes to kind of emotionally augment yourself. A really good thing about my field education placement is that it's done it's mostly done on Sunday. And it's really emotionally taxing work to work from like 9 a.m. to 6 p.m. Doing pastoral ministry to people who you see slowly killing themselves every week through substance abuse, and just how emotionally and physically taxing it is to live outdoors. And so to build relationships with those people is very emotionally draining. So you have to kind of sometimes say, I'm going to focus on this intently on Sunday, and then take Monday, Tuesday to rest, and then not start really reflecting until Wednesday, so you don't push yourself too much emotionally.
You want to add anything?
Oh, well, I was just thinking about a lecture with Dean Dudley Rose in my Intro to Ministry Studies course, and he said, if you can't find time to pray in your schedule now, you won't find time when you become a minister. If you can't find time to read now, you won't find the time when you're a minister. And so, in thinking of that, it becomes necessary. It's very hard, it is very overwhelming. But I think if you're true to your vocation, and you are because you're here, you'll find the time. And I think that's a giant understatement, because I'm not saying it will be easy, but you'll find the time and you'll enjoy it.
That was a great question, and it reminded me of 2 other things I just wanted to briefly mention, and that is that here at Harvard Divinity School, we see field education as a crucial integrative component in your learning, and so we actually covet that you have that juggle and you have that challenge, because it is not only grounding, as Lily testified and I've heard so many students say, it also hopefully is informing your studies. We do not see field ed as the application of what you are learning in class. So there is a paradigm that many places do uphold, which is we want you to learn something for several years and then go out and apply it to people or places where it needs to be applied. That's not the way we see it here. We see it very much as get engaged and bring some of what that engagement teaches you into the classroom, and vice versa. It's more of a cycle. And therefore, we invite you and encourage you to start field ed your first semester, which means it's before you've taken a class on preaching, it's before you've taken a class on liturgy, it's before you've taken your pastoral care and counseling class, because we're not sequencing this as something that you build up to because you've got these skills, as if we preference building of skills in classroom. That's a very important piece. And I just wanted to add one quick thing and then turn to Jed here. And that is that Lily shows you she's in her 4th unit of field education. So you have to do 2, but we don't say, okay, that's enough, you can't do more. So you could actually do 5. So you're doing 1 less than some students do. Jed, step in there.
Just to add to what Emily was saying, we see that kind of experience as fundamental to being here, fundamental to deciding whether or not you want to be a minister, or what kind of minister, what you're going to do with this this part of your life. 2 years ago, our then intern, Laura Schatzer, who is now a 3rd-year student here, she's still here, came close to a middle-aged woman who was out on the street, named Dolly. Unhappily, Dolly got loaded one night, fell over backwards, and shattered her skull on a railroad tie, and ended up in the hospital in a coma for the next 6 weeks. And Laura spent an increasingly larger amount of time with her, until at the end she was basically mediating among the family and friends, hospital. She had become an extraordinary pastoral presence at Mass General. At the same time, she was taking a course here on the Psalms, and the process of reading to Dolly every night from the Psalms, deciding which ones and how and when and why, illuminated the course for her, I think, in a way that nothing else could have. So that as stressful as that was, and it became for Laura sort of the defining moment of that internship, and indeed was what decided her to become an ordained minister. It seemed to us a perfect intersection of the academic work that she was doing here and a close to the ground experience of what it means to care about Psalms or theology or whatever it is the one is doing here. So I think that as stressful as that was for her, it was still a defining moment for her and for her education here. So we aim for that kind of stuff.
Great story. Yes.
We have time for one more question.
Oh, sorry, we were dragging the time. I thought we were done at 12, so go ahead. Yes, please.
Just wanted to know if field education is offered for the doctoral students, or if it's...
We have not had, since I've been here, a doctoral student in field ed. You would be very welcome. The problem, to be candid, and you'll have to talk with some of the professors who are going to oversee the doctorate, is that your time is so loaded up toward the PhD. There's no allergy amongst our professors to field ed. It's very highly regarded, and they would totally get why that would be appropriate. So what I would have to do is work with your advisor so that the field ed would be really synthetic with the work that you're doing. So for example, if you're doing participatory action research where you're including participants, that could be a very dynamic field ed. And I've always been kind of thinking, who is that student that's going to want to do field ed that includes the participants in their research? Because I don't know if you're familiar with that form of research, but anyway, that would be an example of how I would love to do that. Thank you very much. As I've said, I think my panelists deserve a round of applause.